welcome back to my channel, and today I'm bringing you the TBRathon reading vlog. I will be honest here, I'm filming this intro actually when I sat down to edit this vlog because I realized I hadn't actually done an introduction. However, I did slightly speak about it in my January TBR, which will have it linked up in the cards and down in the description. But TBRathon is a readathon created by Leandra, the TBR0, who will have linked down below, as well as a link to their announcement video and the Google Drive if you would like more information. For 2026, Leandra has created a few different options for participants to choose from. Personally, I decided to do the Lost in the Library board game throughout the month of January, which is what this vlog is about. I am a little disappointed to say that I didn't get as far into this board game as I would have liked to, and it is something I would love to try again. It is a fantastic layout. But as I just said, you are about to follow me along for my Lost in the Library journey. We started off by doing the first roll of the game within my January TBR, but I'm going to include it here as well, and that's where we're going to be kicking off. We are going to be starting over here in the Manga graphic novel room. Once again, I've got the 12-sided dice here and the first roll. I'm not sure which way I'm interested in going yet, but that is a 12. So maybe we will head over towards the non-fiction space. I would like to try to touch all of the rooms, but I'm very interested in reading a non-fiction throughout the month, so let's try that. So we will go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we are going to start with a non-fiction as well as our graphic novel. As part of this readathon, you have to select a starting point, a starting room within the library, and I selected the manga / graphic novel room. I have rolled in Mandela and the General. Non-fiction is probably a bit of a hard first prompt to go with because non-fiction books can take a very long time to read. But we'll see how this adventure takes me. And I've decided to roll in a book that I started last year as one of my TBRs, and that is Join the Rich Club by Peter Switzer. So I have started this. I'm not too far into it, but it is written by an Australian and it is about building wealth. So I am going to try to finish this one out. I finished reading Mandela and the General by John Carlin. I really enjoyed this retelling of history. The imagery was very well done. The direction that Carlin used to retell what occurred, mainly through the voice of the General, was also well done. It gave you a different perspective of history and made it more consumable, I think, by some people through the fact that it was a graphic novel over a thick non-fiction book. I definitely enjoy reading graphic novels structured similar to this. I really enjoy graphic novels that give a different perspective on things, especially ones that touch on some really hard traumatic pieces in our history, and I would definitely recommend this to anyone else who is interested in similar books. But this one is done, which means we are now going to be moving on to my non-fiction book. I'm over 50% through Join the Rich Club by Peter Switzer, which is what I'm reading for a non-fiction book. Like I said, I'm over 50% through. I'm currently on chapter 9, but the month is getting away from me. So far, the book has spoken a lot about investments, property, stock. You could read this worldwide, however, it does have a very Aussie twist to it. It is Aussie focused, as Peter Switzer does live and reside in Australia. So far I am enjoying it, but the month is getting away from me, and this is a bit of a hard slog to read, as it is a very financial focused, numbers focused book. So with that in mind, I have decided I am going to do another roll, and I'm going to be reading both this book and whatever I select next in tandem. I am kind of hoping that I will get this roll plus another roll in before the end of the month, but if this is the last roll for the month, I'm still happy with the books I've read in relation to this challenge, this readathon. But let's jump in to my next roll. So last roll we were here on non-fiction, and I have once again got the 12-sided dice, so let's give this a roll. 3. Okay, so we can either go to community room, 1, 2, 3, or we could go to hobby break, or we could go to young adult fiction, or we could go to Indigenous author. I was considering going to Indigenous author because I have a book on my January TBR that I was hoping to finish. However, this is TBRathon, so it is preferred that I read a book that I currently own. So I think I'm going to go to young adult fiction. So young adult fiction it is. We then rolled a 3, which got us to young adult. I decided I wanted to read a book on my Kobo, and after looking at the books I already owned, I have decided to go with Venom and Blaze by Roz McLaren. This seems to be a young adult fantasy romance, and I'm not 100% sure on what it's about. It is book 1 in the Mirrodom Legends series. From the Goodreads blurb, it seems to talk of a prophecy that was provided by the wise ones back when unicorns roamed the earth and the skies were darkened by dragons, that talks of a time where every baby would be born blonde and good, but that birth would then be followed by another baby that they would say was its mirror. I've already picked up that Venom and Blaze are both characters within this story, but there is also another character called Thorn. I am going into this one a little bit blind, but I am excited for the journey. How exciting that I was able to finish on my Kobo Venom and Blaze. This book was for the prompt young adult, and it was definitely a young adult book. There are quite detailed depictions of violence and feelings associated with violence, which definitely makes sense considering that this book is about the good people and the mirrors. So the mirrors are very much people who can murder, can cheat, can lie, and are more inclined to do that, are rather aggressive and very easily succumb to the dark emotions that people feel. while the good, on the other hand, cannot directly lie, murder or kill or do any acts of violence. In fact, I didn't realize this until quite far into the book, but they are all vegetarian because they cannot hunt. This is the first book in a series. It follows Princess Venom, who has a absolutely terrible relationship with their father, who is the king, and upon the birth took 5 mirror babies and is keeping them within his dungeon. The story follows the timeline. We start with the children first coming to the dungeon, and then we get some snippets of the years that follow before the main story commences, when the children and the princess are approximately 17. Even after finishing this book, there are so many things that are left unanswered, especially in relation to Venom and her mission. But also it has a lot of the storylines tied up in a nice little bow. There is a very clear ending, but it also finishes with a very clear beginning for the future. And I will be continuing with this story because I would love to delve further into what makes a mirror and what is it that governs the good, especially considering Venom and what transpires with her and how she ends up at the end of the story. Considering her character development, I'm not sure if I'm going to particularly like her going into any further books, but I would love to see how Blaze continues to develop and how that relationship ends up playing out. It was definitely an enemies to lovers, lovers to enemies type of story. And if that is your jam, I would definitely recommend it. It was a very quick read, which is why I selected it for this readathon. And that is what I love about doing readathons, is I probably wouldn't have selected that book anytime soon if I wasn't trying to find a book for the prompt young adult, and specifically I wanted something that was on my Kobo and was going to be relatively quick to read. So if all those factors hadn't come into account, I definitely wouldn't have picked this one up anytime soon, but I do not regret doing so. I guess continuing on from that, I am finding that as a reader, specifically if I'm going to participate in readathons, you all know, I've said it before, I'm a slow reader. I'm a slow panner, I'm a slow reader, I'm a slow gamer, which is kind of counterintuitive to what you want to be achieving in a readathon. So I think that when doing readathons, I do need to focus more on those shorter, sharper reads, or audiobooks that I can listen to while I'm doing other things, which is probably something I will try to do more of as I continue down my readathon path, my reading journey. So that leads me back to my non-fiction, which is Join the Rich Club. I actually haven't read much more since I rolled in Venom and Blaze. And though I am wrapping up this readathon video here, I am planning to finish this out in the next couple days before the end of the month. But pulling in something like a non-fiction, though I want to read more of these, it is probably not something I necessarily should do for a readathon unless I am doing it in audio book format, because non-fictions can be quite heavy reads, especially if you are manually reading them. I guess that is a little bit of a failure for this readathon, as I am finalizing this before I've actually finished one of my books. But really, we only participate in these challenges for the fun of it. So really, as long as I am enjoying the journey, who really cares actually how many books we get through? But this book is Australian and focuses quite heavily on habits, tricks, tips on building your financial wealth. So far, I've been reading a bit about the stock market, and we are going to be transitioning over the next 2 chapters into talking about property. There are certain aspects that I'm finding very interesting and helpful, and things I will incorporate into my financial life, but there are other things that I'm personally not so interested in, and things that I've already read for before in other financial books. I think if you are wanting to start from the basics of financial health, especially in relation to your family financial management, I would be more likely to recommend Barefoot Investor. I'll have a cover of it over here by Scott Page, I think it is, if I remember correctly, and rather than join the Rich Club. This does still have that humorous writing style that you find in Barefoot Investor, but overall I think that book provides more basic starting fresh tips and a very clear guide on how to move forward, and in fact you could follow that from step 1 to the last step and achieve what the book is wanting you to achieve. While this one is a lot more like it provides you options and says, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? What about this? This is what I have done. This is what I know of other people have done. It gives you a very clear global idea of finance and increasing your wealth, but it is not a step-by-step guide to do so. But I am currently about 50% into it, and I am planning to finish it up, hopefully, fingers crossed, in the next couple days. But this is really where I'm going to wrap up this readathon. I had a lot of fun participating. I really like the TBR focused readathons that Leandra, the TBR Zero, develops. Especially this January one, as it just kicks off my new year. Throughout the year, I am planning to participate in more readathons, but I definitely don't want to fall down a rabbit hole of feeling like quantity over quality. So yes, I do want to look at reading potentially more shorter books or utilizing a lot more audiobooks. I also don't want to end up reading a lot of fly swatters, more so for the numbers than the vibes. So that is a trap that I'm going to be focusing on not falling into. But did you participate in TBRathon this month, or are you doing one of the yearly challenges? Please let me know down in the comments. I would love to discuss it further. For more details on all of the books I have finished throughout the month of January, stay tuned for my reading wrap up coming up in the next week or 2. I will put a link to that playlist up in the cards and down in the description, though at the time of uploading this video there won't be any videos in that playlist. I'm also looking forward to see what Leandra is going to bring out for TBR Harvest in October. So make sure, if you haven't already, you like, comment and subscribe to follow me on my reading journey. But until next time, I'm Verity. This was my TBRathon vlog, and now to the outro.